I've been running GrapheneOS on my Google Pixel 10 for almost a month now, and I wanted to make a video sharing my experience. Maybe you've heard of GrapheneOS, maybe you're considering making the switch, or maybe you're just clicked this video because my blue eyes. Either way, I want to share my experience for the non-technically experienced. I'm not a software engineer. I'm not super technically inclined or have an overly paranoid persona, but I'm just someone who wants to take control of their privacy. So GrapheneOS is a free open source mobile operating system based on Android. It's designed specifically for privacy and security on Google Pixel devices. As of this recording, GrapheneOS only works with Google Pixel devices. Although they recently announced that they'll be supporting Motorola devices in the future, right now, it only works with Google Pixel devices, and not all Google Pixel devices, a select few that you can find on their website. And just so the irony doesn't completely go by unnoticed, GrapheneOS is free, it's open source, and specifically for privacy and security, but it only works with Google devices. GrapheneOS is a mobile operating system, so think of it like if you're an iPhone user, you have iOS, which is what you see every time you look and interact with your phone. The way your whole phone operating system works is called iOS. Or if you're an Android user, you have your stock Android operating system that comes pre-installed. Phones are data vacuums. They broadcast all sorts of usage patterns, device performance metrics, app usage frequency, network connection details, and location-related info every few minutes. Normally, we have very little control over what's being broadcasted when we're just trying to use our phone. Compared to Android or iOS, GrapheneOS has no built-in analytics or telemetry. It only connects to its own servers for essential updates and avoids Google endpoints by default. To put it even simpler, GrapheneOS gives you granular control over your phone and what you allow it to share if you want it to share anything at all, and it drastically cuts the data you're broadcasting. Beyond just the privacy side, GrapheneOS also has some really solid security features baked in. For example, an auto reboot feature where if your phone hasn't been unlocked for a certain period of time, it automatically reboots itself, which re-encrypts all the data on your device. So if your phone is ever lost or stolen, your data is protected. There's also things like a duress pin where you can set a pin that wipes the device if it's ever entered. These are features that just don't exist on stock Android or iOS. So why have I chosen to install and use GrapheneOS? There's a few different reasons. Partly because I enjoy tinkering with things, and partly because I want better control over my data and privacy. I've known mobile devices are data broadcasting machines for years, but the ability to do anything about that has been relatively obscure until something like GrapheneOS came along. I'm not using GrapheneOS because I have something weird to hide. I'm just not trying to lose control over my data, and I'd like to at least be able to choose what I share. It's not that I think the data is going to cause me to get hacked or anything either. It's more that the companies want as much data about users as possible, and if I can limit that, I'm all for it. I also got GrapheneOS because I want to support free and open source projects like what they're doing, also Signal and Linux. I'd like to say having GrapheneOS helps me not rely on another mega company like Google, but the reality is you need a Google Pixel to run GrapheneOS. And also, it's worth mentioning, I create content about privacy and surveillance, things like that. So naturally, that comes with an inherent elevated risk that others often don't have, which makes me a nice candidate to install and run GrapheneOS. And while I'd like to think that I create content that generally everyone agrees with, I have no control over how everyone reacts or responds to anything I say. So I think it's just generally better that someone in my position takes extra care of their privacy when something like GrapheneOS is available to use. It seems like a no-brainer and honestly, the more responsible thing to do. Now, when it came to installing and setting up GrapheneOS, it was easier than I expected, but it wasn't as seamless as signing up for like a new Apple device or something like that. You can go right to grapheneos.org/install/web and look through the steps. It can look intimidating at first, or at least I know it did to me. But as long as you fit the prerequisites mentioned on the page, it's actually quite simple. You're basically following the page top to bottom. I'm not going to go through the full step-by-step installation in this video, but I do just want to give you an overview of what to expect. You plug your phone in, your computer recognizes the device, and then you just walk through the steps from top to bottom. It'll say unlock bootloader. You click that, and then you just follow the next step, download a release, and so on. That's really it. You just follow a few steps and you're up and running. One thing I did, and I'm not sure if this is the right way to do it, but it worked for me. Before I installed GrapheneOS, I went through the pre-installed Android operating system, and I downloaded the Visible app because I have my phone serviced through Visible, which is part of Verizon. And I went in and I made sure that my number was set up to that pixel. And then I went through and followed all the GrapheneOS install instructions. I don't know if I could have set it up through the Visible app after I installed GrapheneOS. I wasn't sure if I would run into any issues, but I did that first before I installed GrapheneOS, and it was a completely smooth experience after that. Also, I think it's important to note a few things about what GrapheneOS isn't. Once you're inside GrapheneOS, you can still access things that you could on a normal stock Android. It's not like you're cut off from the outside world as far as mobile operating systems go. It's just that you get to choose more details about permissions with the apps you download. You could still download the Google Play Store, which if you're an iPhone user, this is like your app store. The difference is that GrapheneOS runs Google Play services in a sandbox, meaning it doesn't get the deep system level access it normally has on a stock Android phone. It's treated more like a regular app. You could still download the usual things, but once you download, let's say, Gmail, for example, you'd still be using GrapheneOS similar to how you would on a stock Android because it's sharing a lot of the details with Gmail. The only difference is that in GrapheneOS, there's a lot more permission settings that you can tweak than you could with the stock Android. I think that's the beautiful thing about GrapheneOS, is that it gives you that ability to pick and choose your own approach to privacy and how you want to treat your phone. You don't have to download the Google Play Store app, so you could totally bypass it, and this would make it like a de-Googled phone, even though it's a Google Pixel 10. You could download F-Droid, or GrapheneOS has its own app store, allowing you to bypass many of those things. But if you're someone who relies on, say, Gmail, you could still download that. And I think that option is what makes GrapheneOS so appealing. Another thing worth mentioning is that GrapheneOS lets you set up separate user profiles on your phone. So you could have one profile that's completely de-Googled for your everyday use, and then a separate profile where you have like the Google Play Store and whatever apps you need that requires Google services. They're completely isolated from each other, so the apps in one profile can't see or access data from the other. It's almost like having two different phones on one device. I think what's important to note is that if you install GrapheneOS on your phone and then download all of the apps you normally use, giving them full permissions, you wouldn't really be taking advantage of GrapheneOS. And with all this, running GrapheneOS, I think, comes with a cost. It takes more brain power. When you download something, you have to be more mindful of what it is, what you're downloading, and what permissions you actually want to share with the app. And when it comes to the design, GrapheneOS isn't as flashy as Android or iOS, and sometimes it feels like you're using something that's from 10 or 15 years ago. It's not that it's limiting or bad, it's just that the design feels a little bit older and less polished. Some people might love that, I know I do, but others might feel limited by it or feel like they're using an inferior device because it doesn't look as fresh, modern, and beautiful. The keyboard is clunkier, and the default messaging app has a very utilitarian look to it. I'm someone who doesn't like having any color other than black on their wallpaper on any of my devices. I use my mobile devices strictly as tools. I don't need them so personalized that they have to be looking a certain way or the font showing up in a specific style. So for me, GrapheneOS is literally perfect. And as far as battery life and performance goes, I haven't noticed any real difference at all comparing it to stock Android. If anything, it might be slightly better because there's no stuff running in the background. It's not pinging servers every few minutes. Performance has been smooth. I haven't experienced any lag or crashes. It just works. And because of that, it's made a great daily driver. Now, I think it's worth noting, though, if you're considering GrapheneOS, it's not magical in the sense that you do everything the same and it doesn't share any data with anybody. For example, if you needed Google Maps, you could still download the Google Maps app and change some of the app permissions. But to use Google Maps, you still have to interact with Google Maps, and that's still going to send data to Google. So it's not like a hack where you're completely not sharing any data with them whatsoever, and you're still getting the services that they're offering you. And I think that's an important distinction to make. And the part that might be confusing to a lot of people is they think they're using a phone that somehow becomes this anonymous device while they're using it the same way they've always used phones. But again, what's great about GrapheneOS is you get to decide what level of data you want to share or if you don't want any of those apps at all. So if you've been on the fence about trying GrapheneOS, especially if you already have a Pixel, I'd say just go for it. The installation is reversible. You can always go back to stock Android if it's not for you. If you're considering picking up a Pixel device just for GrapheneOS, that's what I did. I don't regret it at all. I won't be switching from GrapheneOS. I really like it. But I think if you care even a little bit about your privacy and you're willing to be a bit more intentional about how you use your phone, you'll appreciate what GrapheneOS offers. It's not perfect, but it's the best option I've found for someone who wants more control without having to be a software engineer to figure it out.